Andy, thank you so much for being the first victim of my interview ever. When you initiated the idea of doing this, I think a couple of weeks ago, one of the things I absolutely love so much about you, Andy, is just get things done. And very frankly, in my journey as a coach, I've had, it's been in the back of my mind, should I do this podcasting? We're always thinking of how can we create value and leave a legacy. And you, just 2 weeks ago, you said, Dom, let's do this. And I'm like, wow, amazing. And here we are having this chat today. The first moment, I think Sue and I met you at the Magic Moments, boy, we were absolutely captivated at the genuine, authentic soul that you are. And for us to be today, locking arms with you, collaborating as part of EQ Strategist to bring even more of our love and learnings and grow and serve with the people out there, man, it's one of the greatest honors we have. But thank you so much for making some time for this call this morning. I think the outcome for this call is very simple. I just always hungry to find new ways to have people benefit from wonderful people who are inspiring heroes who go out there and touch lives, and you are one of them.
Thank you.
I just love for this short little interview for people to get to know even more about you and how all this came about.
And by that you mean the haircut, or?
Amazing soul that you are now, an inspirational speaker who has touched lives across 11 different countries now, Andy?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about your background, being in this world of transforming lives and helping people who live their highest. When did this journey start?
It's incredible when you think back. And that's why I love, like you shared, everybody has a story. I truly believe that. And you're exactly from the same cookie cutter as myself in that we love to ask questions to just hear people's story. Like, it's fascinating. And people are, especially from Australia, obviously where we come from, people are so humbled in a way of the desire not to share for the thing that I believe is still alive and well in Australia, and that's the tall poppy syndrome. And for those that are listening that don't know, that's we love in Australia, we love an underdog story. It's like, come from the ground up. We'll support you all the way, but don't get too tall or big for your boots, because we'll quite easily cut you down. And I feel that maybe a big part of my life was that. It was that was that desire to prove myself in the world as a young man, and finding yourself. You wanted to prove yourself. So I guess for me, the way I found that I could, prove my worth in the world was, to go out and become successful, by my own definition. So I was a clueless kid, but for me, I was very good at saving money, Dom. Like, everything, I was always very creative. I was never good at school per se. Like when it come to like the conventional stuff, mathematics and physics, I was atrocious. Yet English and language and communication, something I always really enjoyed. But I knew very well that school wasn't my place, and I left quite early. So I left in year 11 in Perth, Western Australia, where I grew up. So I was halfway through. I did my first lot of exams, absolutely nailed the English lit, 90% plus for the English lit, so essay writing and things. And the mathematics, which the irony is my dad's a maths teacher, I can't remember the score. I don't even think it's worth announcing, but it was terrible. And I got to that point, I just started to think, there's got to be more to life than this. Like, I can stick around and stay through school. I know it's not my place. And it's that, I guess, the first interaction or that calling of going, I know this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. I know there's something more, and just having the courage to go for it. So I did, and leaving school early is, you're really pigeonholed then, because you don't have the backing of education, and you don't have the certification and things to step out in the world. So long story short, I really fell back on what I enjoyed and loved. And I've been riding motorbikes, racing motocross actually, since I was about 10 years old. And I had a passion for it, loved it. I was out in the shed, I was fixing bike. One of the things I loved to do in my spare time was actually find broken down old motorbikes and things and do them up, fix them and sell them and make a profit. And I was doing that while I was at school. And so what I did then, I started an apprenticeship. As I started working as a mechanic, as a motorbike mechanic, left school and loved it. Like, I loved every moment of it. I was in a small family business. They really, I guess they taught me about, we talk about culture, right? The culture of this is a family business where you are brought into a family in a way. Sounds like the mafia here, but we're fixing motorbikes. But literally brought in this wonderful family business, which are still friends to this day. The motorbike shop still exists there. It's been going since 1929. It's still there in Perth, Western Australia. And like I said, good friends to this day. And so, I just existed, mate. I was earning the wage, as an apprentice, first year mechanic, earning $167.70 a week, literally existing in the world and learning the skills and the craft. And it was that, I always had this question in the back of my mind, like, I wonder what else there is. And I didn't realize that it was always swimming away. And it was a chance encounter. I believe just like us, there's no coincidences in life. I interacted with a guy in Perth, Western Australia. His name's Jeff Moritz, and he's got a super successful business. It's called Jeff Moritz Gas and Air. And he did very well in, Perth, when the mining boom happened in Perth, Western Australia, property. He was involved in heating, air conditioning, and, so throughout residential properties and things. It was a big business. Now, I didn't know who this guy was.
Happening when you were working as a mechanic.
Yeah. So I'm literally met this guy as a chance encounter.
How old were you then, Andy?
What's
Roughly,
that?
How old were you then? How old were you then? The chance meeting with Jeff.
Great. So I was at that time, I think, 18 years old. 18.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah. So no personal development, anything, just working away, just existing. So what happened was this guy, Jeff Moritz, was on a holiday at the same time I was, having a break weekend away. And so we're in Mandurah, Western Australia. I'm with a group of friends. We're sitting in a spa bath with a beer in hand, as you do in Australia. And this guy's sitting opposite us, and you could just sense there was something different about him. For me, coming from middle-class family, I was never around money or wealth, but you sort of knew when there's people that it wasn't about the money. It's just that they carried themselves very differently. So I was intrigued, and this guy started asking us questions. So I'm with a group of friends, and he starts saying, what do you think you're going to be doing 5 years from now, 10 years from now? How much do you think you're going to be earning? Like questions that were just, as a mechanic apprentice at that time, earning a few $100 a week, it's something you don't even question or fathom. I'd never read books in my life, as far as, personal development or anything. And he quizzed and quizzed. And this was a guy that the day before I saw, he had this huge boat on the back of a trailer, and he had this brand new Toyota Land Cruiser pulling like this whole thing. I just remember seeing it and thinking, wow. And then here we are sitting with this same guy, and he questioned and questioned, and he got to the end of the thing, and he said, I'm going to give you boys one piece of advice. He goes, you can take it. You can just think I'm a silly old man. He said, but do yourself a favor. Go read the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And like I said, I didn't read books, Dom. I was the kid, right? When it come to reading, I enjoyed writing, but when it come to reading, I would choose the books that were the choose your own adventure books. And those books were where you would read a chapter and you would get to the end of the chapter, and then you would decide, if you want to do this and go open this door, turn to page 64. I would choose the fastest way through and take that route. Then book's done, finished, I can write the project. So I didn't read. And I went home from that trip, and there was something in it, and I said, I'm going to buy this book. And that book changed my life. That book, in an instant, my whole perception of everything that I'd learned to that time, working hard for money, hiding away, just doing my thing, very good at saving, but didn't know anything about investing or anything like that. And I read this book, and it was like this, I call it like a holy shit moment, Dom. It was like, wow, like, why wasn't I taught this? Like, this has just opened Pandora's box. So with that information, that knowledge, I went looking and researching property. I was very interested and fascinated in property. And 2 months later, I bought my first property. So I was 18 years of age, and I bought my
2 months later. Unbelievable. Yeah. 18 years old. Oh, my goodness.
Very cool, right? I think back now, and it's like, what was I thinking? It's hilarious.
Today at my age, I'm like thinking, boy, if only I had started so much earlier in life. And that's one of my wishes for my kids, for them to get started early. But what an incredible mindset. And for an 18-year-old youth that might have been tempted to go out there and, I don't know, party with friends and all that kind of stuff, for you to just have that discipline and drive to do that. what was that drove you, Andy? I know you read that book and you got excited, but it would have taken a little bit more than that, I think, to want to, have that, we called it the two marshmallow effect in emotional intelligence, to want to put aside that thing instead of having that instant gratification. What was that what was that vision that you had at that time?
And the key is the word you just said. It is vision. It's that for the first time in my life, I had one. It wasn't about what's happening tomorrow. It's about, I wonder what it looks like at 30. I wonder if I implement these things and what my life could look like. I wonder what things I could have that I didn't think I could have before. I wonder what I could create. It was always, I wonder, as opposed to the limitations we put on ourselves, which was based on my upbringing, my environment. I remember a lot of negativity about, buying a house at that age, the risks associated. I mean, we're talking, Dom, back then it was $120,000 for a 3x1 in the suburbs, 25 minutes from the city. So for me, I look back and think, why didn't I buy a 4? That's the feeling. But, it was exactly what you just asked. It's that for the first time ever, I had a vision of something grander than what I chose to believe. Meaning I stretched my vision to say, why wouldn't that be possible? And that was it, and the journey began. So that was the, those people that show up in your life, for a reason or a season, or, for me, no coincidences. It's no coincidence you and I are here now after meeting for the first time 6 years ago. And that really comes back to appreciation of human beings in our life. This was a guy sitting across that's taken time out to share wisdom that he's clearly learned from the things and experiences he had. Then who am I not to listen? No, why would I not? And to take that on board, not with ego or arrogance or I guess jealousy or anything. It was just a feeling of pure curiosity of going, wow, this is a guy that started from nothing, turned it into, why couldn't that be me? Why couldn't I do the same? So yeah, that's really it. I had a vision for life.
You're amazing, Andy. And I know that you've shared with me your journey of how taking it from that. So you're starting off as a mechanic, and then you start off your own business. Here you are already buying properties, one a year, I think, if I'm not mistaken. You made that one of your goals, and then you started off your own business at the age of, what was that, Andy?
23, I started the first mobile mechanical business. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So 18 years old, you're this entrepreneur, you're driving this, and then subsequently you ran a cafe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yeah.
You ran a cafe. All throughout that, you started on your journey as a coach, and at age 30, I think you shared with me that you bought one of your goals was to get a Ferrari. Is it Lamborghini or Ferrari?
Ferrari, yeah, that's right, mate. Yeah.
Oh my goodness! And tell me about that. Tell me about that. Was that a goal that you set, and how did you feel when you achieved that goal?
It's fascinating in the story. In when I share this, and as you know, I do a lot of work with youth, and the one thing is I always put myself in their shoes and remember where I was. As that 18-year-old kid that read Rich Dad Poor Dad, that for the first time ever thought about this vision. And thought about, I wonder if that's possible. Then anything's possible. And so I set a goal, and here's what's funny, Dom. I remember it like it was yesterday. I got a picture of a red Ferrari there. I got a picture of, like the big house and, all the things that, define success for me as that 18-year-old kid. And I had it written with words, right? So every morning when I would wake up, the first thing I would see was this thing, this little poster, right? A4 piece of paper. Here's what's ridiculous, Dom. I remember it. I can recite it to you. On or before the 11th to the 12th, 2010, I'll be 30 years of age and will acquire $1 million in assets by investing in property, shares, and by running a business. I'll know I achieve this when I have a bright red Ferrari parked in the driveway. Dom, morning and night. And even when that voice said, it can't happen, it's never going to happen, I read it morning and night. And so, that Rich Dad, Poor Dad book went on to Think and Grow Rich, went on to, learning from some mentors. I paid for personal coaching. I went and did the Tony Robbins journey. And all throughout that, it was just making the vision clearer. And so I set that goal as an 18-year-old kid that, I'll know I've achieved, the definition of success, in my opinion, as the shallow 18-year-old when I've got all the trinkets of success. And so that was it. It was the Ferrari must happen. But I guess what's really cool, Dom, is not the story. It's always, we hear this and we know it innately, yet it's not until something happens, then we can look back on the journey and appreciate. And that's the thing I never did in the journey that went. I never stopped to appreciate it. It was always like drive, go, much like in corporates and much like we experience in the work we do, it's KPIs, it's whip, it's push. And that's what I did for myself in growing the business and employing people and expanding things. And like you said, one property a year was my goal. And one year specifically, I bought 2 properties in 1 year. But at what cost? Everything has a cost. Just drive, push, whip, just going for it. And it wasn't until the Ferrari actually happened. And I think probably that's the most important part of the story, I feel. It's that, as an 18-year-old kid, I never believed it. And there was probably a part of me that still never believed it the whole way. And I tell you that, Dom, in Sydney is where I went from Perth over to Sydney is it Leichhardt? I think it was Leichhardt. There's a dealership there. And
Little Italy in Sydney.
Yes, that's the place. That's it. Of course, that's where you buy a Ferrari. You get a spaghetti bolognese and a Ferrari in the same spot. So that's definitely the place, right? So I went all the way to Sydney. I flew over because I put a deposit on this car. I've been busting my hump for all these years. And, I managed to, I had equity from property and things to buy this thing, right? This realized dream. And here's what's amazing, Dom. This is the bit of the story that most people don't share and I feel is really important. It's that I arrived to pick this thing up and it was very surreal. I'm standing there. The Vince, I remember the guy's name. Of course, his name's Vince, right? And what was really cool is he had a phone call. He said, I'm going to be back in a moment. I just got to take this call. And he left me with this thing, this 10-year dream. So I happened at 29. I set the goal at 30. But I failed in my goal. I did it at 29 years and 4 months, Dom. So I'm left with this thing, right? I'm standing there looking at this thing in awe, and it's very surreal. And I remember I opened the door and I've just looked at it, and I've sat in, and the first thing that happened is I've grabbed onto the steering wheel, and the very first unconscious thought, the very first thing that entered my mind was, is this it? Is this all there is? And it was this holy, scary moment of if I've worked all this effort for something that I don't even appreciate, it was that moment of going, wow. And the best way to put into context, Tom, is you remember one of my favorite cartoons as a kid was the Roadrunner. Okay, so he never gets caught, right? But the coyote doesn't give up. The coyote just keeps whipping himself, literally, and he bang, bang, bang. He gets whacked all the time, and he just keeps going, right? What would happen if he ever caught the Roadrunner? What would happen then? And that's how I like it. It's like if he ever caught it, what actually happens? And one of the things that's quite amusing, if you go on YouTube, you'll see a cartoon they've made up of what happens if the coyote caught the Roadrunner. And then he turns into an alcoholic and he's overweight and he's got no purpose in life. And then he becomes a Jehovah's Witness and starts knocking on doors. He's lost his sense of direction until he finds it. And that's what happened to me. It got to a point at this realized dream. I brought it back, and I was always smart with money. I didn't buy the car just to buy the car. I turned it into a business, and it was the very first ever rental of exotic cars in Perth. So it was Perth Ferrari Hire. I set that up over in Perth, Western Australia. So Dom, that was like a real pinnacle part. It's like, for me, it was a closing off of that journey of chasing things outside of myself and starting to look within. That's what this steering wheel did for me. It made me look within for the first time ever.
Oh my goodness. Man, I'm absolutely in awe at all that you've achieved. But what I love most about you is it's not what you've achieved and the wealth and how much you have in the bank or the car that you drive. But what I absolutely love most about you is you are sincerely one of the most happy, joyful people I've met. And who's super generous with your time and with your energy. And I think that's the essence of what success is all about. And I totally connect with your story, because I had that moment as I shared with you in our interview last week about how I got into that moment where here I am at IBM and reached that level, and I'm not happy.
Mm-hmm.
And tell us a little bit about your upbringing. How did your parents respond in that situation? And when you said, hey, I'm going to drop out of school, I'm going to go and do that. Your dad was a math teacher, you said. What was mom like? And tell us a little bit about your childhood.
Yeah, and parents look still together to this day, married 45 plus years, I believe. So Dad was a school teacher. Not only was he a school teacher, Dom, he's a school teacher at the same school I went. So, yeah. Well, I never had him for maths, luckily. But Dad, Mum and Dad, I mean, we come from the typical middle class upbringing. We never wanted for anything, yet everything was provided, but not, I guess, to the point where you could have everything you wanted. It was just the bare necessities and needs. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot from my parents, which you never appreciate in the moment. It's always after the thought, after the event, you look back and there's the moments of appreciation. Just come back from a trip from Perth with them. So every moment that I spend, you just notice and appreciate that, they played such a real pivotal part. And that was, they were always very supportive. They were very supportive in the decisions that I made. And I feel, if I look back now, I was quite courageous, in saying, it wasn't their decision or their influence at all. I was the one that just said, enough's enough, and I choose not to go on. And this is the path I want to go on, and put everything together. And they were super supportive along the way, probably super frustrated and upset in some ways. His dad, maths professor, and his kid dropping out halfway through year 11, there's probably some challenges just there, but, always super supportive. Now, I guess if I look at my parents, the best way to describe is my dad inspired me to do what I did by teaching me what not to do. And I mean that in the nicest possible way. 1987, Dom, do you remember what happened in 1987?
1987.
World financial
crisis,
setting, right? In Australia specifically, I don't know if you remember much, and you felt what or experienced it. Did you experience any downturn yourself, or?
I was fresh out of uni, and I just remember it was a really challenging recession in Malaysia, which is one of the reasons why I actually didn't leave Sydney to return home to Australia after my first degree, because there were just no jobs. And I actually took a master's degree in Australia, frankly, so that I could also get a full-time job to look after two younger brothers who my parents were sending to Australia to study at that time. And so that I could get, literally get all the 3 years of my studies and have that start to pay for itself, so to speak. But, sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, not at all. And it gives context too, because I was 7 years old.
Oh my.
So when you consider that, what would a 7-year-old know about a financial crisis? And I didn't know anything except what was happening in our house. And so, if I look back at, I guess, resilience and things I've learned, my dad's taught me so much. And he taught me so much from this one moment, which I believe was his Ferrari steering wheel experience. So Dad, knowing now the information, here's what really happened, is in 1987, or just before that, we were living in one home, family home, and Dad was building a new home for us to move into, like a bigger house, right? And so back then, apparently the type of loan was like a bridging type loan, similar to what they have here, where you pay no interest or any costs or anything to do with the loan facility while your new house is being built, and basically the interest is just accruing. And when you sell the old property, you move into the new one, you clear the debt, and you live happily ever after, which works fantastic as long as there's no such thing as a global financial crisis or anything like a recession. So in 1987, just when Dad's ready to put the house on the market to sell and clear debt, move into the new home, the recession hit. And what it meant was property prices plummeted, obviously, because oversupply and all that in the market. Of course, not knowing this is a 7-year-old, but knowing it now. And, at 7 years old, all I remember was this, Dom. I remember yelling, screaming, shouting in the house. I remember the feeling of fear and the feeling of lack, when it comes to scarcity of money and things. And I remember Dad packing the suitcase. That's what I remember. I remember it got to that point where Dad's packed a case and he's got in the car and he's driven off. Now, for me, 4 hours later, he came back. Obviously there's this, whatever he had to go through in that moment, but there was so much pain and fear and scarcity around the lack of money in the house and, what's going to happen, that I just remember all of that as a 7-year-old kid. I remember all of it. Interest rates apparently shot to 18, 19%. Here's Dad holding the boat and trying to keep it all together. Now, here's where the admirable part comes from and where I learned most of my lessons is that Dad was a full-time school teacher. This is a guy with a university degree that's a maths professor, highly intelligent guy that was teaching by day and was cleaning banks by night. Wow. I remember as a kid going in with him and it was wonderful. Like I got to go into these banks and help him clean and, he's vacuuming and things. The big safe, I remember I got to draw on the whiteboard in the, in the corporate, meeting room out the back. I remember all of that. And this was a guy that was just keeping it together, and just managed to eventually sell the house and sort of keep things afloat. And we struggled for quite a long period of time. Moved into the house, I remember there was no flooring or carpets or, window, no dressings in the windows, anything. It was a bare house we lived in for quite some time. And so, I looked at that and I looked back, in appreciation of it. I mean, the work ethic that my dad taught me, he'll do whatever it takes to find his way out. He came back and dealt with and manned into what he needed to look after his family. So you look at that from a perspective of values of what that taught you, it's pretty impressive. And so, by that story, Dad to this day is very conservative when it comes to investing. And I was the polar opposite. It's like, so Dad would always say my gauge, right, Dom? If I want to know if it was a good investment, I'd tell Dad. If he said it's super risky, I'd go for it, mate.
Amazing.
So yeah, that's really I guess the story of Mum and Dad. I have a brother and a sister as well.
Okay.
Both older, so I'm the youngest. And, we all learn a lot of different lessons. My sister, very much like me, we went on a lot of the Tony Robbins journey and that together and things as well. So yeah, as far as the upbringing, that's the appreciation of the stories that I took away that I now really, I guess, have embodied as to who I am today.
Amazing. It just reminds me of the power of, it's so inspiring because there's so many of those wonderful qualities that your parents have imbued in you, like working hard and just that sincere appreciation and doing whatever it takes. And clearly that's some of the more beautiful things that I see about you, Andy. And quite apart from that, you've also learned to make things even better. Tell me, Andy, I guess, from all of that, there would have been a point in your life where you made that decision to start teaching and passing on all this wonderful stuff you've learned onto others. When did that happen?
It's funny. We had this chat, Dom, and for you, it was a moment at an event where you looked up and you saw that person and you said, that's what I'm going to be doing, right? My very first ever mentor, after reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I watched a DVD of a guy named Jamie McIntyre in Australia, and great guy who, for me, like he's now got political aspirations, and I really hope he does that in Australia because he tells it how it is. And I read his book then after watching this DVD. It was what I wish I'd learned at school but didn't, something along those lines, right? And then I went and I watched like his DVD home study pack. Back then, you would put the DVDs in, which was quite expensive, in monetary terms of watching. I'm watching his DVDs, and I just saw him teaching. He's very natural. He's a great communicator. He was funny and very genuine in everything he shared. And then I went and did a live event with him, and he spoke about Tony Robbins. That's how I then ended up on the Tony Robbins path and journey, because he had obviously done a lot of Tony Robbins work as well. And so from that, I just remember seeing him, and he had a red Ferrari, right? He had the you know, the life, I guess, I looked at, and I'm like, wow, you know, you look at others, you know, and, you know, I guess sometimes I'll show you the way. And he was a big inspiration in that light. And I'll tie that in a while, Dom, because it's fascinating how this all ties in. But, you know, I was like 19 or 20 when I first watched his stuff. And I remember watching it then and thinking, I would love to do that. Like, I would love to be helping people, and then feeling this need. Well, I'm going to have to go and, you know, get stuff in order and show how it's done before I can do that. And so what's really cool, how it all ties in, mate, is that was ironically at about 19, 20 doing that program. And, you know, I went through this whole journey of personal development and everything. Sort of, you know, you sort of outgrow people in a way. I've learned so much from there, and I've moved on to Tony Robbins stuff, Jim Rohn stuff. Like, I just took on everything. For me, when I was in business, I was super busy, Dom, for years, as you can tell, super stressed, super everything. But I would have a holiday every year, but it was never a holiday. My time away was to go to a personal development seminar. I would travel, US or wherever. I would travel to go and do personal development. That was my time off. So it was really cool. I went on that whole journey, and what was amazing, at 29, I'd sort of, you know, the Ferrari had happened, and the mechanic business, it was wonderful, but I just had enough. You know, I'd outgrown it. I really felt like, you know, I'd stepped into my own, and therefore I'm still here doing this thing. It was like like my identity had shifted as to how I perceived myself and the value and my worth to the world. And so it was an ironic morning. I was 29 at the time, and I got an email, which I don't even know how this email ended up in my inbox. I have no idea to this day. And it was from, you know, Jamie McIntyre. I hadn't done any of his programs and stuff in years, right? And I got this thing that said, come and learn to be a coach. Like, it was this thing, right? 30 grand, 12-month program, NLP certification, or 2 years the program was, and NLP, learning all these skills and tools, and plus I'll personally mentor you as well. So it was Craig Jervis and Jamie McIntyre, these two guys put this program out. Dom, those moments of decision, like you said, it was in that moment that I just looked and I said, this is it. Bang. Like, literally, Dom, you know, financially I was in a very good place, right? And I looked at it and I just said, this is it. And I remember it was quite funny. You know, they had all the payment plans and stuff, and I'm like, I'm done. I'm committed. I went to the bank that day, transferred 30K for something I didn't even really know what it was. I just sensed there was something in it, to learn to be a speaker and a coach, right? And I signed up to it. And I remember speaking to Craig, the guy, right? Craig rings. He's like, welcome aboard, everything. So, you know, did you choose a payment plan? And, you know, we'll get things underway. I said, no, it's all done. Like, you know, transferred. And I was like this, huh? Like, I haven't explained what it is yet. No, don't worry about it. I'm ready to go. And it was it. I launched into that, and, you know, it was about probably 20 of us in that first batch of coaches. And, you know, once again, that achiever, that competitive edge was like, I'll get to the head of the class. And that was it. You know, I saw this vision. Once again, no coincidences in life. Here I am now with this email, and made the decision and committed, and that was it. And that journey then led me to moving to the Gold Coast and working in an organization along Craig and these giants in the industry, about coaching and about speaking. So I just threw myself in, sold the mechanic business, and left the Ferrari, everything in Perth, left the business there running, and moved and went for it. And that was it. 2009, that was 10 years ago. Can you believe?
Truly amazing. Truly amazing. What an amazing and inspiring story, my friend.
It's amazing though. I think back and I'm like, wow, geez, I haven't considered that in a while. You know, it literally was burning the boat. 2009, I'm like, everything's there, but, you know, this is it. I'm going for it. Literally. Wow.
You inspire me just by, you know, just by having a dream and saying yes to it because it feels right. You know, you're such a person that's so much into your intuition and your sense, and I think that you have this innate goodness in you of wanting to make a positive difference to people around you. And that's a gift that's so hard to teach people. And that's what we I've seen you in action, and the people and the lives that you've touched, and that's such a great gift that you have. The world is even better for it. And that work has since taken you to 11 different countries now? I think I read from your bio, Andy.
It's yeah. So in a lot of the Asian countries here, I've had privilege, especially with a lot of work with youth. It's been amazing. I've seen a lot of places. Yeah, it's very cool. And the most important thing is not the places, the people. That's what I'm enjoying. And this just come to me, Dom. This is something I feel the need to share, based on what you just said before. If I look back, I believe life leaves us clues, right? I really do. I think that we sometimes get so caught up in what we think we're supposed to do, rather than what we feel we need to do, aligned with who we are. And, going back all the way through school, if I think back to all the way through school, everything, I was always a student counselor, and I wasn't the student counselor for ego. I was a student counselor to want to help people. Even in school, I remember doing the peer support program where you're like the big brother to the kids coming into, like, those things have always been a part of my life, like helping people, nurturing, inspiring people, getting the best out of people, the school captain of our team to make sure, it wasn't about winning the first place ribbon in the 100 meters. It was about how cool is it when your team wins the first place. Like, that was always me. And you just made me reflect on that, which say thank you. I guess considering that is probably a bigger part of anything.
Absolutely. And the thing about you is, you and I get to work together today, and we want to empower people who are stressed about their jobs and worried about their future and worried about change. And here you are, you're the guy that initiates the change. There wasn't something that said, you have to do this. When you read that first book, you were pretty comfortable where you were, right? It wasn't like, boy, there's a burning bridge or a burning house and I've got to do this. But, that strikes me. And then that's the sort of mindset that we so look to inculcate in people, to take charge of your futures and drive and use the best of everything you have around you and to move ahead. But what I love about you is you're just that guy who just keeps initiating the change, guided by this unseen missile of a target,
well,
right? Yeah. Legacy that you want to leave behind. Now, I'd love to get to the legacy question in a moment here, Andy. But before we do that, you now live in Singapore, right?
Correct.
Okay, fantastic. And when did that move happen, my friend? That's an amazing story behind that.
Here's another example. This is where I amuse myself, Dom. You said something just there, and you said about, you initiate change, and, you read the book, and there has been times in life, and of course it's never just been from 19 to 38 now of like an uphill, upward, if it was a share chart, it's not an upward trend. Like, there's been a lot of troughs and things, and, relationship breakdown and things like that have been really tough in the interim of that, right? And there's been times where I think, geez, if I hadn't read that book, how comfortable life would have been. And comfort isn't comfort. Comfort is ignorance. Comfort is being oblivious to what's possible and playing it safe. And, that book gave me the awareness. And sometimes that, that real lack of certainty, because you've taken that step, trusting yourself, and you'll be tested along the way. You have those moments of fear. So that was definitely the case with the move to Singapore. So what's amazing, my beautiful wife, right? I met at the same place I met you at the Magic Moments Youth Summit. So I go every year to, which I unfortunately missed last year, but I go every year from 2009 and to teach kids and inspire kids, about being the best version of themselves. Like, I love it. The youth, as in that room, something very special that happens there. It's amazing, but something very special that happens on the outside of that as well. So I met you, and here we are. And I also met Ginny at the same place, as Ginny took our son. So Kieran is now turning 18 next year. She took him over to attend the camp. She attended a lot of Tony Robbins things and wanted to, to help him and inspire him, and found this environment. And we met at the event. And it wasn't until the second year, which was 2015, I think, that I sensed there was something there. And, it started with Skype conversations and everything. And it was this long distance thing. And at that point, I just sold the cafe. I had a cafe at that point, and I was still coaching on the side. I was still, at that point, I I was still going every year to Magic Moments. Like, that were really the speaking, coaching thing. But a lot of my time was spent and energy was spent in this cafe. Now, the cafe came about. It wasn't solely my decision. I was with my previous partner. We got into this thing together. And then when things didn't turn out too well, she'd moved back to Sydney. Here I am, holding the fort and putting this thing and keeping it all alive. And so I was in something that I wasn't overly passionate about. You know, I was rolling up every day, had wonderful customers and people, but it was a real tough time. Every part of me did not want to be in a relationship, Dom. Every part of me said, fear, you know, let's go back to comfort. I got to a point, I'd got back into motocross again for the first time in about 10 years. I was enjoying myself. I was getting up every Sunday morning with not a care in the world. I was sitting at a dome cafe, you know, for 3 hours at a time, reading the newspaper and just doing just comfortable, mate. And when Ginny and I guess, realized and appreciated this connection, that it couldn't be denied. And it was that she's got so many things happening here, and I have the freedom to say, I'm going for it. And that was it. So I literally said, you know, if we're going to do this, then I'm going to go all in. And I did. I decided, get this, never traveled to Singapore in my life. I've never even stopped in at Changi Airport. I'd never been through here. My first time to Singapore was to move here.
Unbelievable.
First time. And that was it. That was in 2016. And I said, let's go for it. And since then, married, 3 dogs, live in a beautiful home here in Singapore. And the most incredible opportunities have just unfolded from that moment of decision, once again, where it scared the absolute crap out of me to just, you know, what if it didn't work? All those questions come up. Everything that a normal human being goes through, that and more was going on. And, you know, it's that moment once again where you made that decision, and, you know, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation if it wasn't for saying yes to that moment. Here I am.
There's a book in you. I think the title has yes in it, I think, somewhere.
You just need to know a good writer, right? That's you, my
friend. I can't wait to read that one. Oh, my goodness. And my life is eternally blessed for that amazing mindset and that quality that you have. Thank you so much for being that. That's just a tremendous inspiration.
Thank you.
Andy, in all your years of being a coach, what is the thing that gives you the greatest joy in what you do? I've seen the difference you've made in people. Maybe give us an anecdote about it. Sums it up. This is why I love doing what we do.
You know it, Dom. And the only way I can describe it and really give people a visual is when you're in a conversation with someone that's in maybe a place of pain. You're in a conversation with someone, and it's that intuition is something we all have. And if I look at the difference between 20 years of age and now, the only difference is I trust myself even more now, with moments of doubt. You know, it's still normal. And, you know, it's something I'm always getting better at, you know, and just trusting myself. And we know it because we don't do what we know we're supposed to do, what we trust ourselves to do. We do the opposite thing. And, you know, it all goes pear-shaped, and we know it. We're like, like I knew I should have just trusted myself. It's trusting myself more. And I feel it's not even a gift. I think that we all have the ability, when we appreciate ourselves first and foremost, that then we can see the best in others, and we see how we can support that. For me, it's one simple thing, Dom. It's when I see the light turn on, when I see someone see hope for the first time in a very long time, when I see someone see something about themselves they appreciate that they haven't for a very long time. And that can be from a conversation, that can be from coaching, that can be from speaking, that can be from whatever modality it is, I think is irrelevant. That can be from walking up the street and smiling, not knowing what's going on with someone's day. And that's something that I've always been, I guess, proud to do because I enjoy it. I enjoy the interaction. I enjoy meeting people. And I knew from the first time I met you, you know, my wife calls you an Asian version of me. That's what she says. Because it's that, you know, that ability where my biggest teller of human beings and human behavior, of who a person truly is is how they are on a stage and how they are off a stage. You know, if that's someone speaking up there, if that's someone that's a CEO, how is that CEO when they order their food? You know, are they respectful, grateful, appreciative? You know, and we talk about that. I go into my local cafe here in Holla Village where I live. They know me by the first, like, Mr. Andrew, like, you know, they're waving. They're all so excited to see me. And you see them, they're in the zone, they're busy, they're pumping. But then they're like, oh, Mr. Andrew, just, you know, they know the order. It's all happening. And we don't, I guess it's something that's not forced. It's something that I don't go in there because my agenda is that I want these people to get my order right and I shouldn't have to say it. I go in there because it's like, I love meeting people. And it doesn't matter what a person does, you know, by, you know, in Asian culture, obviously we've got the hierarchy, you know, of levels of, you know, affluence in the world. I couldn't give a shit, Dom. I really don't care what people do or where they come from. I want to know the person. Yes. And so that's the key, mate. I love it. And coaching is a very intimate form of allowing that person to see something within themselves. And to me, I play a 1% role in that. I just hold the mirror up to ask a question to help them see something they chose not to see. And speaking is exactly the same. That's my belief, mate. That's why I do what I do.
And this is why you're so great at what you do, Andy. And that's what and you know what Jeannie is saying about me is like one of the greatest compliments I could have, because you are such an authentic soul, and your love for people. You know, I always say to people, right, for people to trust you, right, and trust is something you can build. And for someone to trust you, there are three things. I call it the three likes. A, you got to be likable, and you know, Andy is amazingly likable because you've got this really positive energy and demeanor about you. But the second thing is, you want to use everything you can to build rapport with them, because they want to know that you are like them, right? That's the second like, right? Find the common ground, you know, and that's special. But I think there's a third like that very often the books don't talk about. And that's really the secret essence of someone who's an amazing coach, and more importantly, just an extraordinary human being. And the third like is, you've got to genuinely like people. You go way, and that's very hard to teach, you know, to see everyone just for, you know, regardless of color or creed or position or whatever it is, you know, you see everyone as a human being and you treat them with such love and compassion. And you shared the story the other day, and I think that speaks volumes for the sort of person you are. I think you're sharing about how you and Kieran were coming home, and there were these guys that were chopping some branches of some trees outside. Yeah, tell us a little bit about that story, mate, if you don't mind.
That was just last week. Okay. We're having some work done on our house, and for those that don't know, in Singapore, some people might be listening from Singapore, a lot of the people that do a lot of the labour-intensive jobs, the tradespeople here, tend to be foreign workers. And for me, you know, it doesn't matter who you are, like they're here helping me in something. We've got a drainage problem, and every time it rains, which is quite often in Singapore, we get flooding at the front yard, and we've got a chicken coop, and the poor old chickens, you know, end up with a swimming pool. And so, you know, the company has organised to get these people around and come around. And it's just a thought. And when I say it's a thought I always act on, in that it's a stinking hot day outside. And I see there's about 6 guys there. And I'm driving out of the driveway, and I look over, and I had to go down to the local shop. I had to go to the bank and do some things. And just this thought was, I'm going to get them some drinks. Like, it's not an agenda. It's not like if I get them drinks, they'll do a good job. There's none of that. It's just this thought that I act on. And that is, I went into, you know, the supermarket, cold storage, and I bought a whole bunch of drinks and stuff. And I just went along, and I just said, just introduced myself, said hello, and just basically said to them, you know, really appreciate all you're doing. Just got a little, got some drinks. You know, if you need anything, you know, I'm just up at the house, let me know. Now, it feels good, but I don't do it because it feels good. I don't know why I do it, Dom. I think we just innately, maybe it's trained behavior. And it's not always easy, because not everybody appreciates it. And the thing is, it's not about getting the appreciation from it. That's something, I guess, in coaching is it. I've had conversations with people where I've told them things that they don't want to hear. They'll come back in a week or 2 weeks, but in that moment, there's tension, and I don't feel it because I know that I've said what needed to be said and trust that it's for them to see what they need to see. And people don't always like it. If you spend your whole life trying to be liked by others and be appreciated by others, you'll play a very safe game. That's my belief. So do it because you appreciate it, not because you want to be appreciated.
And I can only imagine, in terms of, these guys did not report into you. The guys were just working outside your home. And I think there's so much that managers can learn from how you engage people. I know that these people would be absolutely willing to go the extra mile, not that you do it for that purpose, to do whatever you wanted from them, when the times were tough and you have to break difficult messages and whatever it is to get them to change themselves and move to a different journey, the level of trust with you, just through the little simple actions that you take every day, just from pure good intent, right? And that's wonderful. And those are such powerful traits that people can learn. And I think there's such a massive opportunity to bring this message into the world and create even better leaders out of the managers out there. But Andy, maybe one final question, if I may, Andy.
Sure.
My question was about legacy, Andy.
Yeah.
I think one day, journey through this life and coaching and all that stuff, a new journey will emerge, and you'll probably say yes to that, right? But as far as our coaching, your coaching is concerned, how would Andy most like to be remembered one day?
What a wonderful question. You know what's, I'll tell you what's evolved. I don't use the word change anymore. Change for me was my forced behaviors going against, I guess, or should I say trusting myself more. I felt like it was change and forcing myself into a direction, right? For me, the more you trust yourself, the more things just evolve. Now, maybe I shared this, Dom. I feel this will be really helpful. If I look at coaching, there was a part of me when I first started out of wanting to be the guy that helped make the change. And I realized very, very quickly that that's not going to get you very far when it comes to helping people, because lasting change comes from within. Lasting change isn't change at all. It's a person evolving into who they really are, and you helping them clear the stuff out the way to see that path and see their truth and then be that guiding light, but being there as a supporter. And that's what I do very well. I support. For me, I don't need to be the guy at the front. I enjoy speaking, but I enjoy this just as much. Now, for me, if I look at legacy and the work continues, it's like when it comes to the journey I'd been on to then meeting you, and then, the conversation we had, you planted the seed. Do you know of anyone in Singapore? And I think in that moment I said, let me think about it. I'm sure Ginny might know someone. I don't know too many people in Singapore. And, I meditate a lot now. That to me is moments of presence within myself every morning. And it was that this thought wouldn't go away. And when I say the thought, it was that, I don't know what it was. You didn't even explained in detail what the role would be, but I felt like there's something in this that's greater and grander to impact on a larger scale. That was it. And that was really that simple. And so in saying yes to you and to Sue and to be part of this experience as EQ Strategist, what's it allowed me to do, I believe, is play the game on a grander scale. And I say play the game, it's that when you coach an individual one-on-one, and that's someone which was typically someone that might have their own business, which will be a small to maybe an SME, maybe they're a sole proprietor, or maybe they're just working in a position and unfulfilled or whatever, and helping them see realizations, it maybe impacts a family, because their wife, their kids, and the leadership then it instills for their children or so on. Now we're impacting change on families en masse, because it's not just about an organization, is that those people go home to families. And when those people go home to families with what they've learnt and they've opened their mind to see and appreciate themselves for who they really are, what does that do for their families? And, when you're talking about companies with 6, 7, 10,000 employees, that's a legacy I want to leave. That's the impact I want to leave. That's where I feel we can really create that. We can really create that opportunity. And, and when there's people that come into their workplace fulfilled and purpose, you don't have to have something outside of your job to feel it. It doesn't matter what you do. These guys in this moment that fix the drainage in the chicken coop, right? Like, they're probably very output orientated, right? But all of a sudden they see purpose in what they're doing because they're appreciated in that moment. And so I want to share that gift on scale. Does that answer your question, Dominic?
Beautiful. That is so exciting and so exciting.
And now you know why I said yes, mate. Now you know why. Now I know too. I didn't know. I just said yes, and now I'm working it out from this interview.
And I hope that also that the whole reason we had that conversation was because your energy is so infectious, and your love and your positivity, and obviously that skill of transformation. I know you call it support, supporting other people in their transformation, but it was so inspiring to me. And when you came into our lives and we had chance coffee sessions together, and I'm like, and you said, hey, I could be interested in that. And you sat in on one of our workshops that we ran with one of our clients, and you came out and you says, oh my goodness, I could see myself being very passionate about doing that. And that from that moment on, it was like, it just struck this chord in me, because part of our mission is to touch as many lives as we can. So we got a target of 1 million before our time's up, and that Sue and I couldn't do it alone. And really, I had a conversation with you about looking for someone to represent us in Singapore, frankly, because it was like, I really got to walk the talk here and get more of the world to experience the Andes and the Jacks and the Carolines and all of that. I have this platform, and I gotta get the world to just feel the power of the love and the inspiration that you are. So thank you for saying yes to that, mate.
Yeah, and to tee that off, every time we met, when you come to Singapore, it's the key of what I've been sharing, is that it was authentic. There was no agenda. It wasn't like two years ago we caught up and had a coffee because you were planting the seed of, I'm going to need a person in Singapore. There was never a thought. And I know that about you. And it's one of the things. The reason I said yes was because of the person behind it, the people behind it. It's because of that, I said yes. Everything else is, my own insecurities of, can I be enough in that environment? All the same stuff that'll come up for everyone that listens to this call. I think that's the most important thing, is that we're not out there painting an unrealistic picture. What we're doing is helping them to see who they really are and how powerful they are in their own right with that. So, you had no agenda. You literally just caught up to catch up. And, there's so many people in life like that. For me, opportunities here in Singapore have shown up that way. Caught up, to catch up. It's that simple. And you never know, Dom. That's the thing that's key, right? It's like, you just never know. The chance encounter 6 years ago, and here we are. The chance encounter 2 years ago, and, my future wife. Like, it's all of those things. Yet you can't have those chance encounters if you don't choose to share yourself with the world. If you choose to close yourself off and play the comfortable game, that ability just to survive and not thrive is not a fulfilling life. So I want to turn that switch on for as many people, mate. And alongside EQ, it's a wonderful platform to live and experience that.
Good on you. One final question, if I may, Andy.
Sure.
Was it okay?
Sure, of course. Far away.
Great. I picked this one out from one of my favorite podcasts. Tim Ferriss. Love his podcast. Here's a huge shout out to Tim and the wonderful work that he does. And one of the questions that he asks in his interviews, if there was a billboard that would be created, right, that Andrew could create, and it will be put out there in your honor, and that billboard could be read by as many people as possible, what words or slogan or quote would you love to have reflected on that billboard, Andy?
Oh, I love it. It's simple, very easy. It's one word, and it's appreciation. That's it.
Oh, beautiful.
For me, that word appreciation is the key to everything that's evolved in my life. The minute we close ourselves off through judgment, which to me, once we judge something, and I have this simple philosophy, Dom, it's really, really simple. It's that there's no good, bad, right, or wrong. There just is. And some famous author I know once wrote a book called What's Great About This? And there's something great about everything. You know, in my relationship breakup, wow, like in the moment, it was tough. However, what's great about this? All the things I learned to appreciate about myself. That one word is the key. I believe when a CEO appreciates everything that he has in front of him, and he appreciates the people that support him in that journey, whether it's the GE that appreciates the opportunity they have in a position and the possibilities that they have, and the fact that, you know, that they bring their all because they're appreciated, that whole thing reciprocates. That's a world without war, mate. It's very simple. A world without war is from that word, appreciation. That's it.
100%. And imagine a world where everyone just embraced that message, each and everything they did.
And do you know what I'd have on that billboard? I'd have a picture of every person from every workshop and every coaching client, and that I'd have all of them on this billboard. That's what it'd be there.
Absolutely. And I know you also have all the ups and downs in your lives up there as well. And Andy, it's been the most amazing hour. You know, the hour of
It's
power.
been an hour. Wow. Look at that.
Thank you so much for the honor of being my first interviewee. I know that the people who review this interview will glean so much from that. Thank you so much, Andy, for spending a very precious moments in your Saturday morning to do this with us. And look forward to doing even more of this with you.
Agreed, Dominic. Nothing I would rather be doing. Thank you for who you are and for this opportunity. It's funny how in these moments you just sit back and reflect. There's things I've shared today that I haven't considered to appreciate for quite some time. So thank you for that gift. It's awesome.
Thank you, my friend.
Wonderful.